to relax it. Will be better next time I try. And even if I still can't do it, yeah, you know that I'm gonna stick to it. Yes, it's all about going through it, and I'm gonna tell you why. Whoopsie, whoopsies, I made a mistake and it's okay. It's okay. Whoopsies are what it takes to get better and better every day. Whoopsies, I made a mistake and it's okay. It's okay. Whoopsies, help me look, see, I'm better at this today. Woo! Whoopsies, whoopsie, whoopsie, whoopsies.
I'm a little embarrassed when I look at my drawing compared to this. I'm just not getting anywhere with this. It makes me wanna hide. Aw, don't be embarrassed. Don't hide.
You should have seen mine the first time I tried. It took a lot of whoopsies to look this way.
No one's perfect on their first day. Whoopsie.
Whoopsies, I made a mistake and it's okay.
It's okay. Whoopsies are what it takes to get better and better every day. Whoopsie, 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 whoopsies.
Well, what about this? I want to jump rope, but nope, I just can't do it.
Well, not yet. Come on and practice with me. You'll see there's nothing to it.
Whoa! Whoopsie.
Whoopsies, I made a mistake and it's okay. It's okay. Whoopsies, help me look, see, I'm better at this today. Woo!
It was only a dream, the waves of evil crashing over us. It was only a weak and faithful scream beneath the battlements. I know it's hard to follow before it's too hard. Wake up, my love, please don't care about me. It's hard. Wake up.
What is up? What is up, you guys? We are back at it again. Another epic day of 100 days of Rootkit. Today, we're gonna chill out a little bit, alright? I know some of you guys want a little bit of a break, alright? A little bit of a calm down so you can try to absorb the craziness we have been learning. And it's been some craziness. It's been a ride. We've been chugging through things. Let me make sure everything is good over here. Epic, it is. All right, epic. So today we're just gonna do some additions. We're not gonna learn anything new. We're just gonna reinforce the same old things that we've taught already. And then tomorrow's gonna be the same way. All right, we're gonna have shorter, days today. Today we're aiming for just about an hour. All right, so nice, short, and sweet, so you guys can focus. We're going to do a little bit heavier assignments so you guys can be challenged, and we'll continue trekking on. I hope you all are ready. I hope you all are hyped. Remember, you can put in a comment at any time to ask any type of question. But before moving on, hey, if you didn't know, we are Rootkit. Hold on, whoops. Technical difficulties. One second here. We're Rootkit nonprofit org here in the US of A. All right, don't go to college. Don't go to any other boot camp. We're right here. We're teaching you everything a college is going to teach you and more. And boot camps aren't even competing in the same class as us. All right. We are totally in a different league. All right. Continue on here. On top of all this free stuff we're doing, you can go over to our blog. We have this one. This one ends tomorrow, I believe. Yep. Our week 8 giveaway ends tomorrow. All right, we have another one. We have the week 9 giveaway that starts after this one. All right, we're going to be giving away some type of merch from our store. We don't even know what it is. We're all going to roll it randomly here together live on stream, and then we will pick the winner randomly. All right, it's free. Just click on this green button, enter in your email, and then you just need to prove that you're subscribed to the YouTube channel, following us on Twitch, yada, yada, yada. You have to do this every week to participate in every new giveaway, all right? So remember that every single week. So continuing on here, if you like what we're doing and you want to help support us, if you click the link in the description of this video or somewhere in the Twitch bio, it will send you here, all right? We are a nonprofit, so all donations are tax deductible. All right, avoid your taxes, just donate to us. All right. Additionally, depending on how much you donate, you will unlock certain merch like our stickers, the epic 100 days of Rootkit stickers, which are limited edition, the collab t-shirt, which I love very much, and this epic sweater. Look at this thing. All right, it says Rootkit on the back. If you guys are tracking, this says 100 days of Rootkit. All right, chilling, sleeping. Laziness, that's what we want. All right, we want to dev good so we can be lazy, do our job quickly, and move on with our lives. All right, all donations are being matched 1 for 1 for the first 10,000 donations. All right, first 10,000, those come in at the end of the month, and we have pillars to hit along the way, like streaming for 24 hours straight, shaving my head here live on stream, and the one no one wants to see, me shaving off my beard. All right, no one wants to see that. All right. Let me drink some of my coffee here, and we shall chug along. Additionally, all of our certs moving forward are going to be issued on Credly. Let me see if I can pull up that. Here we go. All our certs are issued on Credly alongside with Microsoft certs, Amazon certs, etc., etc. They're all on the same platform. This makes it very easy for you to link it up with your LinkedIn, and it will show and verify that you are actually certified and how long your certifications last for. Additionally, if you would like to volunteer for us, because we are a volunteer-driven organization, all right, you can volunteer and earn this active volunteer badge, which is super, super cool. It lets you show off, how great you are and how you're willing to help the world become a better place. Everyone wants to see that. All right. Alrighty, let us jump into our code here. So we've been chugging along, making our little dungeon crawler game. All right, let's catch everyone else up. Let me close this. Main.py. All right, we got a little game here that just a little recap. You start the game, get a menu. You can choose which item in the menu you want, and then you'll start auto fighting things, all right? You'll start auto fighting things, and then after you fight them, you can then loot their dead bodies, all right? You can go around looking for, I don't know, nukes. I think we had nukes in the game. And then you can pick those items up. Our game is coming along really, really nicely, really, really well, and it's looking like some fun, all right? It's looking like some fun. Yesterday, we went into the cancer, or what can be the cancer of organization, but it's very, very important and helps things look really nice. As you can see right now, my folder's looking pretty sweet, pretty organized, you know, and when we open up libs, then we're like, oh, look at all those files, but we can close it away and be like, ah, whew. Don't need to see that anymore, all right? Just focus right here on my game, on the beautifulness in front of me. Are there any questions right now before we get into the assignment given yesterday? I saw that some of you guys have put in your answers, so we're going to go over one of them. All right, we're going to go over one of them, and then we're going to talk about how I would go about it, all right? Because again, in programming, there's multiple ways to get to the same solution. Any questions before we chug? All right. Looks like not, so we shall chug forward. So, excuse me, Evox sent in his solution to this. So over on the main here, is this in main? He added to self dot, so in inventory. All right, so over in inventory, he made his change. So if we open up lib and we go over to our inventory section here, this is where he made his change. He went over to add, all right, and actually, sorry, self.add. Yeah, this was in, no, this is in the player. Sorry, he didn't link the actual file. So let me go to the player file, or our hero, I should say, and it would be an inventory. Where did he add this? Self.inventory add self.drop table. I'm very confused now. I'm not quite sure where he added this in particular. Let's rerun this and refresh ourselves on the error before we move forward. Sorry, guys. All right, so let's start the game, and we can try to pick up a knife. We'll pick up a knife. We'll pick up a machine gun. We'll pick up a nuke, and now we got our error. This is randomly happening. All right, it's randomly happening to our inventory.add underscore drop table because the item index is messed up. That's right. So if we go over to mobs.py, all right, because it's the being added to our mob here, the issue. So adding stuff to the mob's inventory was causing the issue. So his fix, which works, is using an if statement, all right? Using an if statement like this. Oops, let me tab it up one more time. There we go. So this is his solution, which works 100%. So this will make it from, and will stop that error from happening. So if the item index is less than the length of the drop table, then add it. All right, then add it. So what was the original issue? Well, the original issue is our random number picker here. All right. So always refresh yourself on all of these functions that you're using that are selecting between a range of items, all right? Whether it is range itself, whether it's slicing a string, whether it's using random numbers, you always got to refresh yourself because they all do it a little bit differently in regards to the last number, where you're supposed to stop. Some of them use inclusive and some of them use exclusive last numbers for stopping or picking a number, all right? So this one looks like it's going to be inclusive, all right, inclusive. And when we count in our array is exclusive because it starts at 0. So if I have 3 items in my array or in my list, it's going to be index 0, 1, and 2. We're getting length of 3 though, all right, length of 3, because length counts in normal human terms, not from 0. So we have length of 3, but we only have a max of index of 2. So random int right here is actually picking or allowing us to pick up to random number 3. So up to 3. There is no 3 index in our list. All right, there is no number 3 item in our list here. So that is causing the issue. So this will make sure that the number we choose is always less than, right? Less than the, what do you call it? Less than what the total length of our drop table. So this will work. The only issue, and maybe this is not a bug, maybe this is a feature you want, right? The only issue is if it's ever 3, it will pick a 3 here. It will go to the if statement, and if it doesn't match or meet this if statement, it's not going to run adding a new item to the drop table. So technically, all this guy will have is a rusty sword in their inventory. And let's see if we can go ahead and recreate this. So let's go ahead and let's do start game. All right, that time we got a nuke in there. That time we got a dagger, machine gun. All right, let's play again. Start. There we go. You can see here, we didn't get any extra item, right? We didn't get any extra item in here, right? Maybe that's what you want. Maybe you want there to be a, since they can choose between 0, 1, 2, and 3 right now with the random numbers. Maybe you want a 25% chance of there not being an extra item with the goblin. That is 100% up to you, right? This is your game. You can do whatever you want with it, right? So that is one way to fix that issue, right? The other way to fix that issue, how I would have gone about it, right? Doesn't mean it's the right way, because it always just depends, and it depends on how you want to do it, would be at the end of this, do a -1. So that way it's the length -1. So that way we have an appropriate range of 0 to 2 instead of 0 to 3. All right. So that way we'll always get an item added to the inventory. This, like I said, will always add the item to the inventory. So there's 100% chance that there will be an item from this drop table being added to the table or to the inventory. Maybe you want that. Maybe you don't. It's totally up to you on how you want to do your game. So if we rerun this, you'll see there's an item there, and there's an item there, and we that ended quickly. Let me rerun this. There's item, item, item. So we'll always get an item showing up. All right, we'll always get an item showing up. All right. Any questions on that before we chug on forward here? Let me see in here. All right, sweet. So let us move forward, shall we? So let's look at our design doc to figure out what we want to do next. Now, of course, you can improve the drop tables, but right now the drop tables work for us just fine. All right, we have 4 items in here. We have 4 items. Now I'm confused about this. It must have not been 3, sorry. It must have been 4. I was getting my numbers wrong here when I was giving the example, but same concept applies, just 4 is the max, and we're keeping it from 4. All right, so let's look at our design doc here to see what we should do next. So we got bosses here to do next. All right, we got bosses to do here next. So we haven't had the XP system. We have combat going on. We're not doing score right now. That's fine. And we're not really keeping track right now of the levels. So right now we would have it so everything we kill maybe is the level. We won't really worry about that. Let's add some logic. Maybe that every 3rd person that we fight is a boss. It's very simple logic for right now. You guys can always make it more complicated, but I think that will suffice. Before doing that though, our game is now getting more complex, but with that complexity, it's looking a little sloppy per se. All right, a little sloppy in the sense that when I press 0 here, it looks very chaotic. Everything's really close together. It's kind of hard to read. We have some typos. So let's do our bosses, but before that, let's just clean this up a little bit. Let's add some extra spacing so it doesn't seem as chaotic. So let's go ahead and fix up this comment here. All right, and let's say, yep, select is fine here. Let's see what else we want to clean up. So clear this, click play. So after we leave the menu, maybe we should add some extra spacing, right? Some extra spacing, and maybe some extra spacing after every round, right? So by extra spacing, I mean some extra new lines, all right? So we can kind of distinguish what's going on. So when we enter a game loop, let's just do another separate print here, just for some new lines, right? Let's just do 2 of them. So we get some extra spacing, some separation, right? Remember, the /n, let me zoom in a little bit more, is going to be your special new line character, all right? We're gonna add 2 new lines, so this is the equivalent of pressing enter twice. Additionally, we want it to be at the end of the while loops here, right? So let's go to the end of the while loop. So every round, there's some little separation, little bit of spacing. Is this? Yep, this is the appropriate spot. So now if we run this, close this out and rerun this, we'll see we got the same selection screen. Let's go and start the game here. And there we go. We got some separation here, so it looks a little nicer. We can see that we attacked, we killed the goblin, it said what our current health is, and then we get the menu displaying out. Maybe we want to add some separation between this and the menu getting printed out so it looks a little bit nicer. So let's go ahead and do that also. And we can also have it so our health has some extra language going on here. So let's find where we're printing our health. This is where our current goblin is. Maybe we should say what our health is at the beginning. So I'm going to delete that and move it up. So at the beginning, let's say print player's health is currently blank HP. All right. And we got to do a dot format right here, dot format, and then we got to add our health. All right, it's going to be player dot current health. All right, player dot current health. So we're just doing a print statement here with format, right? Nothing crazy, nothing new. Just so we can see this in more formal setting. Just print it right here at the beginning. And now we want some spacing between killing and then the menu printing out. All right, so the menu is going to happen inside of this if statement. So right at the beginning of it, we can go ahead and do our print statement, and let's just add some spacing here, maybe 2 new lines. All right, some 2 new lines, and then let's rerun it and maybe see how this looks. All right, maybe this is the formatting we want, or maybe also we should do no, we'll just run it like this. All right. All right. Welcome to the dungeon game. We got our menu. We'll go and start the game. All right. Maybe this is a little bit too much spacing. But we're playing the game. Our player's health is currently at 20 HP. The player attacks with a rusty sword, killed a goblin, and we can see we can choose a nuke or a rusty sword. Let's go for the sword because we don't want to be too OP, right? All right, looks like we're doing good right now. Maybe a little bit too much separation here. So we can maybe get rid of 1 of those spaces, maybe 2 of them. And maybe we should do a little print statement here at the beginning of the menu. All right, so it's so it says like, oh, looting in process or something like that. So it's a little bit more clear what's going on right here. So let's get rid of 1 of these new lines. Let's do both of the new lines. So let's just have 1. Actually, we can do 1 right here, and then afterwards we can do our menu display right here. So loot some items. Right, loot some items. We'll just say that right here. And let's rerun this. Close the last game. Rerun. Start our game. Here we go. Now it's starting to look a little bit better. Here's our whole combat phase. Loot some items. We can select an item to loot, and then we can press enter, and bam, we go through a whole nother combat phase. Maybe we don't like there's so many spaces here, so we can remove one of the new lines down here at the bottom. All right, so there's not as many spaces. So let's rerun this and play. To 0, there we go, and let's choose Rusty Sword, and we can see there's one less new line, so maybe this is what we want. All right, maybe this is what we want. Nothing crazy, right? Nothing crazy. We all following along so far? Good, good, good. Remember, at any time you can put a comment and let us know how it's going on for you. Additionally, we have well, I am in the Discord, so if you are a Patreon or Discord premium member, you can jump in there and join in into the voice chat and chat away if you have any issues or if you want to interject with any questions. All right, you don't have to type. Sweet. So as you can see here, we spent a lot of time on what? On making things look pretty, right? Making things look pretty. This is why in game development, actual proper game development with 2D or 3D assets, you'll have usually a dedicated team or a person that's going to be in charge of the visuals, in charge of the design, the animations, etc., etc., etc. Because getting the look and the feel and the design right is very, very important to your game, relaying information to your users, but it takes a very long time. It takes a very long time to do that. So you as a programmer, unless you're going to be like a front-end programmer, you want to know some of these concepts, but you'll generally be avoiding them, all right? You'll generally be avoiding them. It's not your job to necessarily make all the visual things pretty. You should know some of the basics, you know, like we're doing here, so you can make something that is usable, but no one's going to harm you if it's really ugly, all right? As long as it's usable and someone can figure out what's going on, you'll be good, all right? But keep in mind that it does take a while to make interfaces look nicely, all right? So, let us continue on here. If we wanted also, we could knock out in our design document the concept of levels for the floors, like how many we're deep right now. We could do that in a little cheeky cheat way per se, all right? An easy way to go about that is at the beginning of our game loop function here, all right? Now outside the while loop, we can just make something called our level and have that equal to 0. And that way we can just, every time we loop, we can just increment this up 1, all right? And then print out what level we're on, all right? It's just that easy. So we have something called level here, a little variable called level. If we go to the bottom of our while loop, this is where we would want to up the level, right? So we'll say level plus equals 1, all right? So this will increment by 1 every time the loop happens, all right? Again, level, when we first make it, needs to be outside of the while loop because we don't want level to be set to 0 every time the game loops. But at the end of the while loop, we want to put it at level plus 1. This is not necessarily true, I guess. This is like the easiest place to put it, but technically, we should maybe put it in the looting if statement, because this will technically still be hit if the player is dead. Because if the player is dead, there's a possibility this gets hit, because when you go through this loop, when the player fights, they may die here. The looting won't go off because you can only loot things when you're alive. This would go off, and then this would go off. So this could be a potential issue, all right? Specifically for stats. So keep that in mind. We aren't going to change it right now. We may change it later when it becomes more applicable, but this is a potential like bug where when they die, they'll technically go up one level. Or maybe this is how you want it to be. I don't know. It's totally up to you and how you want your game to function. So let's here at the beginning, when we're printing the player's health, let's also print here what level they're on. So print, and let's do that in level blank. All right, we're just going to say level and then the variable name, and we'll do a dot format, and we'll say level. All right. So again, all we did was add a variable here at the beginning, at the end to increment the level every time we loop. And then we're going to print what level we're on here at the beginning, right before we print out the player's health. So if we run this, let me cancel the last game. We'll see we get our nice little menu screen here. We'll click on 0 to start the game, and we'll see we're on level 0. That's where we start. If you want people to start at level 1, then just change the level variable here from 0 to 1. All right, so we're at level 0. We won. We're looting. Let's go and take that knife. Press enter. Now we're on level 1. And now we can loot some more. Let's go and take the dagger. And now we're on level 2. And then let's take the nuke, and looks like we have died. All right, level 3 started and we died, and technically from level 3 after our death, now we're on level 4 even though we died, which is the bug right now because of this. So to fix this one, again, we could move this right into this if statement. We're not going to do that for right now though, so just keep that in mind. All right, I want you guys to be aware of this. We're going to show this off later when we're doing our stats stuff, how this is causing the bug again, so we can reinforce this to you guys, because it is a pretty common error to make, not in programs in general. All right, putting your incrementer in the wrong place. Any questions on that before we chug on? All right, then let's move forward. Oh, here we go. Scroll up. I want to see your print statement above the while loop. You can make this print statement however you want it to be. All right, you don't have to word it the exact same as mine. All right, it's totally up to you guys. This one, same thing with this one. It's totally up to you guys on how many spaces you want. So let us continue here with our bosses. Now, bosses can be done a million different ways in regards to when they spawn in. We can have it so it's a set amount. I think it's pretty common for it to be like, I don't know, in some games like every 5 levels or every 10 levels. For like idle clicker games, you'll get a boss. Some of them do linear boss releases, so basically it's like 5 at first, then it's like 10, and then it's 20. I guess it'd be that wouldn't be linear, that would be exponential, I believe, because you would be facing a boss on level 5, then 10, then 20. No, that would be just multiplication, right? 10, 20, then 40, then at 80, and then etc, etc, etc. Basically it doubles the level they spawn in. Some may do it random, so maybe you want it to be random, where there's like a, I don't know, 10% chance that a boss will spawn in, right? It is 100% up to you on how you want to go about this. Right now we're just going to do a linear approach where it's every 3 levels a boss will spawn in, right? Every 3 levels a boss will spawn in. So nothing crazy, nothing fancy. Again, it's up to you on how complicated you want to make this, all right? It's totally up to you. It's just your logic that you have to program out for it. So where would we add this code? If we want to spawn in a boss, how would we add that? How would we spawn it in? Well, we have a couple we have one place we can spawn it in, and then one that's going to be an issue. All right. The place we would spawn it in would be right here, where we're spawning our goblin, except instead we would want to spawn one of our bosses. There's an issue though in regards to this right here, where we've hard-coded in the word goblin, right? It's not dynamically choosing this name based off of a class or something. It's hard-coded in, all right? So there's some adjustments we may want to make, particularly to the mob class. We may want to add a name, all right? A name to all mobs. Maybe all mobs have a default name. And then to goblins, we want goblins by default to be called goblin. And anytime we print a status here, we want to print what the name is of the enemy we killed. So instead of calling this goblin, we would just call this here enemy. All right, we would just call this enemy. So that way, enemy is generic enough where if it's a boss or a goblin or whatever, it doesn't matter. The rest of our code below should run just fine, just like normal. All right. And before we were just doing goblin because we were moving forward with goblin. So these are things to keep in mind. And since we used classes and we abstracted things properly, we have a concept called mobs, and underneath that we made our goblins. We can use mob again to make our boss. Let's say our boss is going to be a tree, right? We're fighting trees, right? We can use mob to also spawn our tree bosses or skeleton bosses or whatever bosses you want to end up making, all right? It's just that simple. So if we go over to our mob file, so over in libraries, let's open it up, and there's going to be your folder called mobs. We'll open that up, and we'll see our mob in here, right? We don't have a name attached to our mobs right now. So let's go ahead and make it so there is a name by default. So we'll do self.name, right? Equals, what is going to be equal to? Well, we should have a default name things will get, but allow for people to edit them later on, right? This would be a perfect example of a optional argument. Or maybe we want it to be required. Every time you spawn a mob, it's required to give it a name. This is totally up to you, right? This is totally up to you. Both are correct ways to go about it. We're going to use a optional argument right now. All right. So all we're going to say here is name equals, and then we're just going to do I need a name. All right. So it's going to be very funny for players to see a mob called I need a name. So if the developer forgot to give it a name, it's going to be very funny for them because they're going to see a creature called I need a name. All right. So if we take our name variable that we just made up here, we'll put it right here. So we have self.name is going to be equal to our name argument by default. That will be I need a name, but it can be changed by people later on. All right. So now that we've modified mob, we need to go to the goblin class and give goblins a default name of, you guessed it, goblin. All right. So if we go here, you can see we have super.init, right? This is for the parent class called goblin, or sorry, called mob. We just made it so our mob init can take a name. So if we go to our super init right here, this is where we can put the default name for goblins. All right. So if we go in here and say goblin, now all goblins that we spawn by default will have the name goblin. All right. And technically you can make it so goblins get custom names or have the potential for custom names to be made for them later on. We don't have that set up right now with the code that's in front of us. So the way we can do that is exactly what we did in mob. We have a new optional argument up here in init. So if we do comma name equals, and by default we want the name of our goblins to be goblin, we could say goblin right here, and then just pass name into init. What have I done? There we go. So when a goblin spawns, by default, they'll have the name Goblin. And remember, we need to pass that name to the parent class, to Mob, because Mob is the one that's assigning that name right here. I know it might be a little bit confusing. It's kind of like Inception, all right? That's literally the best explanation for it, because you're giving a name right here, which is being passed to someone else right here, which is then being ingested right here, which is then being assigned right here. Multi-step process, I know, for doing something very simple. But we're setting it up that way so it's more dynamic on the fly. Because now we have the option of when we make goblins over here in our main, we can make goblins the same way we've always made them. And they will be called goblins. But we can also now change the name here to maybe make this, instead of a goblin, I don't know, make this a grass goblin or a fire goblin or whatever we want to call them, right? Because maybe they're at a fire level and there's no normal goblins, there's fire goblins. I don't know, but the option is now there, right? The option is now there. So let us move on here, shall we? Any questions with that before we, before we continue? All right, I don't see any questions. Oh, wait. Good to continue. All right, sweet. So let's go back to our main, because now our enemies here that are getting spawned have names. All right, they have names. So instead of calling this goblin, we're going to want to call this enemy now. Now, there's a lot of these goblins everywhere that we used. We can change them one by one at a time if we want, but we're using a code editor. We can use the power of it to automatically replace a bunch of things at once. So if you do Control F, so what I like to do personally is highlight the name you want to replace. Then do Control F. This will bring up your Finder. If you click the down arrow right here, this will bring up Replace. So you can replace everything with that name. All right. There's also options right here for matching the capitalization case or the whole word or using a regular expression, also known as regex. If you guys look here, we have a class called Goblin also. It has a capital G. We don't want to replace this with the new term enemy. So we're going to click on this first button here for matching case. If you don't know what these are later on, if you just hover over them like I'm doing right here, it will tell you in really small text what they do. So we're going to click on match case, and as you can see, you can visually see right here that the goblin is now no longer highlighted, the class goblin there. So we'll do that, and we're going to change everything to enemy, all right? And we have two options right here for replacement. One is replacing one at a time, which you can totally use, and the other one replaces everything at once, which we're going to use that one right now. So if we click on this, you'll see everything is automatically replaced, making this very easy for us to go about doing. So sweet, we've now changed everything to enemy. Very nice, very convenient for us. The last thing we need to do is modify our print statement here, because we don't want to say killed an enemy, that's too generic. We don't want to say killed goblin because that's too hard coded. So what will stay in here instead is our little brackets here. So we can do a dot format, and now we can do a in here we can do our enemy and enemy dot name, right? Our enemy dot name, because all mobs that are the ones that we're going to fight will have name attached to them. So we can use this to tell us what the name is. And it looks like also my Control F messed up our import statement here at the top. All right, so I didn't see that one coming. So you can tell it messed it up because our nice little color coding went away. And also right here on the side, you can see it's a little bit yellow right here. This is like a general overview of your code. So you can use this to actually scroll through. But you can see up here, you can see like a yellow mark. There's also a little yellow mark right here, little dot on the scroll bar. That means up here, there's some type of error. So we misplaced this enemy right here, and it's supposed to be goblin all lowercase. So let's change that back to make everything work again. If you missed this and ran the code, you would have seen, whoops, can I exit out of this? There we go. You would have seen an error like this. No module named mobs.enemy. Remember, this is like a relative path, and if you didn't know why this was causing the error, look at the path. You would go and look at libs, go to mobs and open it up, and if you looked in here, you would see there's no file called enemy, right? So that's another way you could figure out that there was an issue right here. So let's change this back to goblin. If we run our game, and let's go and start it, it looks like everything is working just like before. Perfect, perfect. So let us continue here. We want a boss. Let's make a tree boss, all right? So we're gonna add that to the mobs folder. How we can do that is make a new file, and let's call this tree.py. You have the option of making another, you could make technically 2 more folders inside of mobs. One for normal enemies and one for bosses. That's another step of organization. We're not gonna do that, but that is something you can do. Remember, organization is totally up to you and how in depth you want to be. Now we have our tree here, but we don't want to start from scratch. Come on, we're programmers. Steal, conquer, all right? We have goblin. Goblin right here is very convenient. It works. It has everything we need, just a couple things called goblins. So let's go and steal our own code. Let's copy it, go over to tree, and paste, right? We're gonna steal our goblin code. Then we gotta change the name of goblin here to tree, all right? To tree. Maybe we could even say tree boss, right? Because maybe we do have trees in our game, so we'll call this one tree boss. So we know this is for our tree boss. And in here we can enter a name for our tree boss. Let's call this name Cedar, right? Because it's a cedar tree boss, right? And now we can change some stuff in here. So what do we know we can change? We know we can change the drop table. Additionally, we maybe want our boss to be healthier. How do we change the health of the boss? Well, we can always refer back to mob. Remember, if you hold down control and click on mob, it's making it a link that will take you to that code. So if we look in here, there's nothing in here in regards to health. So I guess it was made from fightable. So let's click on control and click on fightable. All right. So it looks like there's a concept of current health and max health that we can set. And there's an optional item here called health. Are we allowing people? Okay. So right here in our super right here, where in mob, in our super in mob, we have our init, and our init right here is not passing through the ability for us to change the health. All right. So we're stuck at the default health right now. Technically, we can change the variables ourselves, but it's more proper just to pass through the option to change the health. So how can we do that? Well, in initting our mob here, we'll just add a comma, and for health, and we'll just say our default health for mobs are going to be 10. And in our init here, we'll say health equals health. All right, health equals health. I know this might be confusing because health is the name of the variable here. This is a special instance of the word health, so there is no issues or conflict between the two names. All right. So now that we're passing it through mob, we now need to go to tree here, and now we can edit health right here in init. All right. This is also where it's best when you use optional variables to say their whole name here. So if you're confused on what optional variables there are, remember you can always hover over the function and it will tell you. There's one called name. By default, it will be called I need a name. So we need to replace that. So we should say name equals name. If we hover over this again, we'll see health equals some type of number. So if we do a comma here, we can say health equals our new boss health. So let's give it a nice healthy 50 health. Very, very tanky, right? Very, very tanky. For its drop table, we'll just make it so there's 2 different items that it can drop. 2 different weapons. We'll call it a tree branch. Tree branch. That hits for 10. And then, I don't know, a leaf. That hits for -1. Right? -1. So, there we go. Our tree boss now has some custom things in its drop table. It's able to drop. So we've completely made our tree boss. Any questions there? Right? Any questions there? All right, I don't see any questions. So the big thing that I can see you guys potentially being confused on is the inception of a knit within a knit within a knit. It's kind of, think of it like a tunnel. Let's bring up paint here, right? Oh man, that was bright. I hope I blinded you guys good with that one. So we have, what is it? Fightable, right? Fightable right here makes a thing, all right? Makes a thing, but we can also say, you know, what parameters to give it. Something like health, all right? Something like health. And that is apparent. And then underneath it, we have this thing called mob. Mob is doing its own logic, but it has like a little tunnel here that it connects from health to its new health, all right? And then we have our tree boss. So tree boss, which is doing its own little logic here, but its health is also connected, all right? So basically we're passing, it's technically up the slide, how we're passing it, so it goes upwards. And we're not just doing that for health, but we're doing that for name, I think up to mob level. So our name, do N for name here, also gets put up here to this name. All right, so it's like a little slide, but sending it backwards, because we're sending it through that super, which is sending it through the parent. All right, and the parent has some logic to initially assign it. All right, again, this is the more proper way of doing it. If you wanted to, you could just say in here self.health or current health equals 50, and then self.max health equals 50. You can do that. Just make sure you change both of them, all right? Because it'd be a little weird if their max health was lower than their current health, or vice versa. If they have a higher max health, but they spawn in with less, so they're like automatically damaged when they get spawned in, that will look a little weird, all right? So you can do it manually like this, or if you make the tunnels, you can just set it right here, and the parent who's in charge of doing this will set it up properly for you. All right, we'll set it up properly for you. This is all we had to do. All right, this is all we had to do to create a tree boss. So let's get him into the game, shall we? And just one last check to make sure there's no questions. If we go over to our main here, we want to add our tree boss to the game. First thing is, we got to go to the very top and we have to actually import him into the game. So we're going to say from lib.mobs.tree import capital tree boss, right? So now we've added him to the game, right? Or her. Maybe it's a female tree boss. We don't know, all right? So we're pretty good so far. We have one last step. Every third turn, we want to spawn our tree boss in. Every third turn. So how do we go about doing that? That's a great question. You might be thinking, must be some complicated logic. How do we do this? Like any ideas right now on how you would go about doing it? By the way, this question is a pretty common question when you get interviewed at a job, like a technical interview question. Usually they'll phrase it in the form of like a clock. How can you easily tell when you're programming the time, like that it's 12 o'clock every single time? Any answers on that? So we learned about check the clock. No, not by checking the clock. If you had no access to a clock, and you wanted to do, if you had access to a clock and you wanted to do like an alarm or something every time at like 12 o'clock, how would you go about doing that? And your counter only counted up. So like your timer only counted from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, like all the way up to potentially infinity, right? How do you tell every time you hit 12, right? Every time you hit a 12. So it'll be technically 12, and every time you hit something that is divisible by 12. So 12, 24, 36, right? And so on and so forth. Make an alarm at 12-hour intervals or 24. But how do you know when those intervals are? How would you program that logic out? Since we're running short on time here, because I want to try to keep us as close to an hour, the answer is there's something we talked about in programming that was kind of old school. Might have thrown you back to like the to like your middle school days. You've probably never really found a use for this knowledge in your everyday life until probably now, right? It's not very common that this is useful knowledge. Maybe if you're doing like a cash register, that's going to be your remainders. Because if you wanted to do division, let's say I wanted to do 26 divided by, I don't know, 12. Maybe you could do your logic based off of every whole number. That's a potential way of doing it. But what if I said every even number that you want to signal on? You may run into potential issues on that. And there's a whole slew of things, all right? There's a whole potential slew of issues that you may potentially come across. The remainder, though, can set you free. It can solve this all in one line easily for you, right? To get the remainder, it's called the modulus, right? The modulus function, all right? So that's the little percent sign instead of doing a division sign. Why is this so useful? Well, let's put in a random number here like this, and let's do modulus 12. And I think that did not work. We might have to go to the programming calculator here. So let's do a random number in here. Modulus, there we go. Modulus 12. All right, we got a remainder of 7. This means that it's currently 7. PM, AM, we don't know. We could do modulus. So random number, modulus 24, and that would tell us what time it is immediately. This would tell us it's 2300 or 11 o'clock. All right, we could do another random number and do modulus 24, and this would tell us immediately it's 1300 or 1 p.m. This is very, very useful. All right, this is very, very useful. It's very common to see in programming modulus used to figure out whether a number is even or not. Because, for example, if I have the number 13 and I do modulus 2, I'll have a remainder of 1. If you have a remainder of 1, that means the number is not even. If I had even number modulus 2, I have a remainder of 0, which means the number is even. this is very useful for our game here. Because if we want the boss to spawn on every third level, we don't need any fancy logic. We can simply say modulus 3. And every time our number is divisible by 3, we'll get a remainder of 0, which means you can activate the boss. All right. So for example, if we are on level 5 and we modulus 3, you'll see that we don't have 0. And if we don't have 0, the boss should not spawn. But if we were on level 6 and we have modulus 3, you'll see we have 0, which means the boss should spawn, right? The boss should spawn. That makes sense? Modulus is very, very useful. All right, it's very, very useful. And it's relatively inexpensive, the operation, compared to how you would go about it otherwise, like using proper division. All right, using proper division, because you can't just do proper division. You'll have to potentially figure out if there's any floating point characters or numbers after the decimal point, and that will be relatively expensive. That's extra lines of code, and this is going to be simpler and shorter. And I'm pretty sure I'm missing another big reason for it right now, but just know this is really, really easy to implement and very, very useful. All right. So if we look in here, we know we're keeping track of our levels right now. So all we need to do is, when we spawn in our enemy, we just need to add some logic here to change it between the goblin and our tree boss. Luckily, we know how to do that, because that would be using that's right, if statement. Anytime we say logic, think if statements. If statements are how we perform our logic. So if we say in here, if we want to spawn our boss, we want to spawn our boss on every third level. So if the level is 3 or divisible by 3, then spawn the boss. So let's write that in here. If the level is divisible by 3, which we just learned we can use the modulus to do this, then spawn the boss. There's one last thing we want to do here. We want to make sure that it's going to be equal to 0, because that's how we make sure that it is divisible by 3. So equal to 0. All right. Then we can spawn in the boss. So if we say enemy equals our tree boss, all right, else, so for anything else, we want to spawn in our goblin. All right. For anything else, we want to spawn in our goblin. Now, there is an issue that we're going to run into right now, which I'll show you guys. If we run our game, and I think it ran on an old one, so let me cancel it. And let's run our game. All right. And let's do start game. And there we go. Not the issue that I expected. Is enemy alive? Missing one required argument. Self is alive. Did we mess this up in, let's look here. In main, in menu. So let's see, we spawned into the game. We printed our player's health. So this is happening, is fightable. So fightable dot is alive. I think you forgot the parentheses on the tree boss. Did I? For enemy, oh, on here? Oh, you're right. Good eye. Good job there. That was just a test, all right? That was just a test, all right? Good job finding that error, right? All right, so remember, we need those parentheses in order to create the object. So if we run this right now and we start our game, we'll see that our player immediately died. That's weird. Why did he immediately die? Huh. Well, looking at our log here, we can see our player attacked a bunch. He was fighting for his life. Why was he fighting for his life? He should just be fighting a goblin. We've seen him fight a goblin all the time. Well, it's because he was fighting our boss, Cedar, level 0. Uh-oh. That's an issue. I thought you said that this will only go on every 3rd division. You're right. It will. It's guaranteed it will do that. One exception, though. Let's go back to our calculator. Where's our trusty little calculator? All right. If it's 0 and we try to divide with 0, we'll always get 0. Right? That will be the default result. Because if you have nothing and you want to get the remainder from nothing, you will get nothing back. Right? So the exception is 0. So remember, if you're going to be using modulus in cases like this, all right, the way you can solve this is either 1, don't start your level on 0. Right? If we don't start our level on 0 and rerun, you'll see our game, our game goes normal, right? We're going to fight a goblin and we're still going to be alive. But if you want to start your game on 0, all right, you can do that also. You just need to add an additional piece of logic here. If the level is divisible by 3, all right, and the level is not equal to 0, right? This may be something you need to add, right? It's sometimes common when you're using modulus logic, depending on what you're doing, you may need to add this line right here, right? The level is not equal to 0. So it must be divisible by 3 and we can't be on level 0. So now our tree boss, even though we're starting on level 0 now, will no longer spawn in. It will be the goblin that spawns in first. And if we run this and start our game, you'll see we're attacking a goblin. So those are 2 different ways you can tackle this issue. Both are correct. Both work just fine. It just depends on what you want to do. All right? It all depends. Again, like I said, in programming, it's like painting a picture. All right? It's no different. It's half art, to be honest. It's literally half art, because you have your organization and what you want to call things and how you want to have everything there. It's half art. So paint your picture how you want to paint it. All right? Just make sure you're painting in a way that you're not being super wet. All right? That you're being dry. Right? Because you want to have dry code as much as possible. Glad I passed the test. Wait, so does that mean first 0, then if the level is divisible by 3 and is to 0 but the level isn't 0? This means that if the level is divisible to 3, all right, because the second part is what confirms that it's divisible by 3. Because this is us getting the remainder. This is us checking if it's divisible by 3. All right. So this is just one statement. If the level is divisible by 3 and the level is not equal to 0, right? Is not equal to 0, because we don't want the tree boss to launch on level 0. You can also modify this because maybe you don't want the boss to spawn for the first 10 levels. You could say, and level is... Hold on one second, you guys. Sorry. Check something. Sorry. Oh, one of the kids were choking. Just to make sure they're okay. Alright, so you could also make it so maybe you only want to spawn bosses after level 10. So you could do level is greater than or equal to 10. So this would make it so our tree boss would only spawn after level 10. That makes sense? So if we, let me go and change this to not equal, and let's run through the game. We should be able to get to a state where we see our player fight the boss. Let me end this and rerun and say start game, and let's go and pick up a dagger. We just fought a goblin, fought another goblin, pick up the nuke, fought another goblin, let's pick up this nuke, and we died while fighting Cedar. So we can see on level 3 we're now fighting the boss. All right, we are now fighting the boss. So everything is working successfully, right? It's working successfully. So I hope that all made sense to you guys. I hope this was a nice, light, easy day. All right, as a recap, all we did was do some polishing. All right, we did some print statements here that just print some empty lines so we can get some nicer printouts. It doesn't look as crazy. Additionally, we added a variable here called level, right? And at the end of our game loop, we're incrementing level up 1 every time we play 1 round, so we can keep track of what level we're on. And then we changed it so our variable called goblin in our main game is now just called enemy, because we don't know what type of enemy it will be. At first it was just goblins because we were only making goblins, but now we're going to have a range of different enemies. So to keep it more understandable to us code-wise, we just changed the name to enemy, right? And then we added some logic here to spawn bosses on every 3rd level. And by bosses, I mean 1 boss, because we only have 1 boss. Additionally, we made a new file in here called tree for our tree boss, right? For our tree boss. So this is our new tree boss that will have its own unique drop table with its own unique items that will be chosen at random to add. Additionally, we did some cleaning up, all right, where we're passing through names and health from parent classes so we can access it at our children class, right? Our child class called tree boss. And that way we can give it some custom health and a custom name, right? And this name, since we're also shining it through, we can also change his name at any time, because if right here we can see if we hover over tree boss, we can set its own custom name here. It doesn't need to be named Cedar, right? It could be called Cedar number and then the level number or something. I don't know. However you want to name your stuff. Or maybe you just always call it Cedar and this one always is called Goblin. It's totally up to you guys. All right, so that's a recap of everything we did. My challenge to you guys, right? My challenge to you guys is I want you to make 1 or 2 extra bosses. 1 or 2 extra bosses, right? Brand new ones, right? So we got our tree one right here. So make some extra bosses that aren't currently made. And then I want you to change this boss spawn logic. So instead of it always spawning tree boss, it will randomly choose one of the bosses that you've made to spawn it in that round, all right? So let's say you have 3 bosses in total. You have tree boss, you have moon boss, and you have sun boss, all right? Make those moon boss and sun boss items here in mobs, and then you're going to want to modify this logic here. So instead of it always spawning in the tree boss, it will randomly choose between the tree boss, the sun boss, or the moon boss to spawn in here, right? Any questions on that? Again, remember, at the end of the day, or every time we add a new feature, we should be committing. So let's go ahead and do our git commit here. So again, it's going to be git add all. And I should be in the correct folder when I do this. So git add all, git commit, And then here we're going to be added a boss and logic to spawn boss in. All right. So we'll go in and close that message out. And now we need to update the remote server. So let's go ahead and do a git push. So that way it's pushed up and the remote server is updated, and bam, we've done our push. Perfect. All right. Remember, we want to do those often. All right, sweet. So I don't see any questions. So I'm going to drop, again, the code for all of our Discord premium members and Patreon members. I'll be dropping the code in the supporters chat so you guys can have that. Your challenge, again, once again, make 2 more bosses, right? Make 2 more bosses and then have it so a boss, when the boss spawns in every 3rd level, it will be randomly chosen, all right? And if you want your player to live longer or kill the boss, you can always go to your player class, right, over in Hero, and you can always set its health to something larger if you want, like maybe like 100, right? Also, another way to do quicker testing is maybe remove this don't spawn on level 0 logic, and that way you can just have it so the boss always spawns at level 0, so you can quickly test your logic. That is completely fine. Just make sure you revert it back when you're actually releasing your game. All right. These are ways that speedrunners and other, game hacks are found and made because there will usually be things put in by the dev in order to make things spawn faster or auto kill bosses. So that way testing can be done quickly. All right. So that's what you can do here also. All right. All right, sweet. I don't see any questions. So that's all I got for you guys today. Tomorrow we'll continue on. Let's go ahead and do that. Tomorrow I'll show you guys creating 2 more bosses, and I'll have those bosses spawn in randomly. And then maybe we'll make consumables. Should we do XP or just consumables? We could do XP. Tomorrow let's do XP system and leveling up. All right, let's do that on our hero. All right. Any questions? Well, we also need to do switching of weapons. I don't know. You guys, you choose. All right, put in the 100 Days of Rootkit chat what you want to see tomorrow. Either the XP system and leveling up, or making it so we can choose new weapons that we pick up from the ground while we move forward. All right, one or the other. All right, but that's all I got for you guys for today. So I'll see you guys tomorrow on the next one.